체크합니다. 체크합니다. 지금은 통역 마이크 체크 중입니다. 하나 둘 체크하고 있습니다. 볼륨 레벨 체크하고 있습니다. 하나 둘 하나 둘 하나 둘. 통역에서 신호 확인되시면 알려주시기 바랍니다. 지금은 오디오 체크하고 있습니다. 하나 둘 하나 둘 하나 둘. 체크합니다. 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 하나 둘 체크합니다. 지금은 통역으로 가는 마이크 테스트하고 있습니다. 하나 둘 마이크 하나 둘. 오디오 레벨 체크하고 있습니다. 하나 둘. 지금은 감도 조절하고 있습니다. 잠시 마이크를 체크하고 있습니다. 실제 송출되는 레벨을 맞추기 위해서 지금은 마이크를 체크하고 있습니다. 하나 둘 하나 둘. 지금은 오디오 레벨을 체크하고 있습니다. 통역에서 지금은 오디오를 체크하고 있습니다. 하나 둘.
잠시 후 1시 30분부터 해양 인문학이 시작되오니 참석자 여러분께서는 자리에 착석하시어 저희와 함께 해주시기 바랍니다. 본 행사는 한영 동시 통역으로 진행됩니다. 통역이 필요하신 분께서는 수신기의 채널을 고정해 주시기 바랍니다. 통역 채널은 한국어 3번, 영어 4번입니다. 수신기가 없거나 사용에 어려움이 있으신 분들은 주변 안내요원의 도움을 받으시기 바랍니다. 행사 종료 후에는 사용하신 수신기를 출구에 반납하여 주시기 바랍니다. 안녕하십니까. 세계해양포럼의 마지막 날이 밝았습니다. 이번 세계해양포럼은 어촌다움, 해역 인문학으로 풀다라는 주제로 해양 인문학 세션을 마련했는데요. 여러분은 어촌하면 어떤 단어가 떠오르시나요? 네, 사실 어촌은 해양수산 자원을 확보하는 등 공익적으로도 큰 역할을 하는 지역인데요. 그렇게 어촌이 우리에게 소중함에도 불구하고 여전히 대중적인 인지도는 낮습니다. 하지만 어촌이 가지는 컨텐츠, 인문학적인 가치는 어마어마합니다. 이러한 배경에 본 세션이 마련되었는데요. 세션 시작에 앞서 본 해안인문학 세션을 기획해 주신 손동주 부경대학교 인문한국 플러스 사업단 단장님의 개회 및 세션 소개말이 있겠습니다.
예, 안녕하십니까. 부경대학교 인문학부 플러스 사업단 단장을 맡고 있는 손동주 교수입니다. 오늘 바쁘신데도 불구하고 제16회 세계해양포럼 해양인문학 섹션에 참석해 주신 모든 분들께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 특히 축사를 해주시기 위해서 참석해 주신 부경대학교 환경해양대학 한경수 학장님, 그리고 발제를 위해서 부경대학교 김효미 교수님, KMI 박상우 부장님, KBS 최진석 기자님 감사드립니다. 그리고 2부에서는 부산수상정책포럼 유청로 이사장께서 자장을 맡아서 토론을 진행해 주실 거고, 네 분의 토론자 여러분이 참석하셔서 발제자와 함께 열띤 토론을 해 주실 것으로 기대합니다. 오늘 바쁘신데도 와주신 점 감사를 드립니다. 저희 부경대학교 인문학부 플러스 사업단은 2018년 제12회 세계해양포럼 때부터 해양인문학 섹션을 구성해 왔습니다. 원래로 5번째로 참가하고 있습니다. 그동안 일반 시민 여러분들이 바다를 보다 친숙한 공간으로 인식할
different sessions and programs. The themes for our sessions were, in 2018, Old Future, Learning from the Modern Sea Routes in Northeast Asia. In 2019, the theme was about Busan, where we're living right now. The past and the future of Busan Port was the theme of our session. And in 2020, the theme was Adrift, to see how people living in Joseon Dynasty met adrift and landed in Japan and then returned to Joseon. And we also talked about a person who were on the seas going to Japan and then going to China, Taiwan, and coming back to Korea. So that was the session that we held back in 2020. And in last year, 2021, we chose a very familiar, popular keyword, pirates, in the context of seas in Asia, and held a session titled Asia's Ocean, Pirates, and Content. When we were deciding on the theme for this year, we invested a lot of time on how to talk about the culture that ocean-related space has for all of you. So when you watch TV these days, you see many TV programs such as 3 Meals a Day, or Fishing Villages, or I Will Live in Fishing Village, or you also see special reports on the extinction of fishing villages. So you see a lot of media coverage on this topic. Returning to the rural areas is something that's really been popular for years, but these days we also have a lot of media coverage on returning to the fishing villages. And since 2019, the Korean government aimed to help create an easy-to-go and attractive, innovative fishing villages with full of energy. This requires modernizing the outdated but necessary infrastructure in the fishing villages, pursuing customized regional development, and adding vigor to the local economy, which is what the Fishing Village New Deal 300 is about. The keyword of this project is fishing village likeness, or fishing village identity. That will be the topic of this session. So hopefully we can learn more about the fishing village likeness. So then what is this fishing village likeness or identity? Our 3 presenters came up with more specific versions of this question. First is, what is the fishing village identity of urbanized villages that no longer catch fish? Second, what kind of fishing village likeness should be pursued through this Fishing Village New Deal Project 300? And third, how does the media illustrate the fishing village likeness in their coverage? To address this question, in part 1, we'll have many different speakers with different backgrounds to deliver their presentations. They're academic researcher, New Deal policy official, and also someone from the press. Then in part 2, alongside with our presenters, we will have 4 discussants come together to engage in a meaningful discussion on the fishing village likeness. Also, I'm not sure whether you saw already, but in line with today's theme of the Marine Humanities session, PNU's HK Plus project team worked with Busan Ilbo to hold the Marine Humanities Content Contest and selected 12 final pieces. I'm pretty sure you've already saw them on the screen earlier, but we showcased them for the first time, the 12 final pieces. They are shown on the PDP screen placed at the entrance of this room, or you can check them out from PNU's HK Plus project team's website. So make sure you check them out. So now we'll begin the session with our presentations. Hopefully we'll have a chance to listen to very interesting presentations and discussions. Thank you very much.
네,
Thank you, Professor Son Dong-ju, for introducing the session. Now, we will have Professor Han Kyung-soo, the Dean of College of Environmental and Marine Science and Technology at Bukyong National University, for a congratulatory remark. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Good afternoon. I am very honored to come here to deliver a congratulatory remark. I am Han Kyung-soo, the Dean of College of Environmental and Marine Science and Technology at Bukyong National University. It was regrettable that I could not meet with you for years at the World Ocean Forum as the contactless culture spread with the novel virus called COVID-19. However, this year, in 2022, I'm delighted and honored to be joined by citizens at this forum as we transition to a with-COVID world and return to our normal life thanks to the efforts of everybody in the world. In particular, the Marine Humanities session, which joined the World Ocean Forum in 2018, has focused on interesting topics related to the ocean year after year, and this year it covers an even more interesting topic. This year's theme, planned by Bukyong National University's Humanities Korea Plus, is Fishing Village Adding Ocean to the Humanities. It is the fishing village that leads the future of the ocean area. Faced with the aging of facilities and population in fishing villages and depletion of marine resources, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries launched the Fishing Village New Deal 300, a national project from 2019 to 2022 aimed at modernizing infrastructure of fishing villages and ports and discovering core resources and differentiated contents to revitalize the village and improve the quality of life for residents. And the essence of this New Deal project is the pursuit of fish village identity. This Marine Humanities session, titled Fishing Village Adding Ocean to the Humanities, is expected to provide a clue to the fishing village identity that is yet to be defined under the New Deal project. I would like to express my gratitude to Park Sang-woo, Director General of Fishing Community Research Bureau at Korea Maritime Institute, and other speakers for presentation at the World Ocean Forum's Marine Humanities session. I would also like to thank Son Dong-ju, head of HK Plus of Bukyong National University, and his team for organizing this session. I hope that the Marine Humanities session will be successful in the future, as well as the World Ocean Forum, which is becoming a globally prominent forum on the theme of the ocean. I wish for the success of all the participants. Thank you.
자, 그럼
So now we'll begin the presentations on the theme Fishing Village, Adding Ocean to the Humanities. We'll first listen to the three presentations and have a panel discussion session with our presenters and panelists. Panel 2's panel discussion will be moderated by Professor Yu Chung-ro, the chairman of Busan Fisheries Policy Forum. Now we'll hear from our first presenter, Professor Kim Yoon-mi, on whaling villages that no longer catch whales and finding the fishing village vibe from the fishing village identity. The floor is yours, Professor Kim Yoon-mi.
네, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Yoon-mi. Today I'm going to introduce to you whale village that has stopped whaling. I am visiting fishing villages when I have time, and I want to introduce two villages. One is Jangsengpo, a whaling village, and the other is Yeongdo-Hari Port, which was famous for shellfish. By looking at these two villages, I would like to introduce fishing villages and the values of fishing villages. Jangsengpo Port, people at Jangsengpo Port started whaling about 7,000 years ago. October is the season of whaling festival for Jangsengpo. At this moment, people at Jangsengpo no longer catch whales. However, they have a lot of heritage related to whaling. They have a village of whaling. They have a museum, and they also offer ferries for whaling. 7,000 years ago, whales were caught by people of Jangsengpo, and you can see that these images are etched on the stone, and you see 53 different kinds of whales that are etched on the stone. The fact that it is the earliest relic of whale, and it is a unique fishing culture of the North Pacific coast, and recognizing these values, UNESCO listed this as a World Heritage. During the Goryeo and Joseon dynasty, although they did not catch fish, they did have the knowledge of how to catch fish. And after that, it became an industry. They started to catch fish in an industrial level. You see the photo left-hand side, these are the fish boats at the Jangsengpo port, and the one on the right is their commemorative photo they took before going out to catch whales. And then next to Jangsengpo port, there is Bangheojin port. These two fish ports were known for whaling ports. And after being liberated from the Japanese rule in 1945, the industry of catching whale continued. On the left-hand side, you see a photo. A big whale was caught by the people, and it was drawn to the land. And the photo on the right is how the fish port looked like in 1978. It's a small fish port, but 13,000 people lived there because their industry was flourishing. And after that, the government designated Ulsan as an industrial complex, and they started to make land out of the water. So they left only a very small part of the port. On the left-hand side, you see the Jangsengpo in 1960, before the government started to make land. And within 10 years, you see the photo on the right-hand side, it is the Jangsengpo port, the same place, 1967. And people started to move out of Jangsengpo port, and one example they moved to is Shinhwa village. It is a village that is known for its beautiful murals. Along with the whaling festivals, Shinhwa Maul is another spot that tourists go to during the festivals. So people in Shinhwa village, they no longer engaged in fishing, but they have fond memories of Changsaengpo. They have fond memories of the flourishing days of Changsaengpo port, but they feel that they were drawn out of their hometown. In 1986, the whaling industry goes through a big difficulty because the international community declared that commercial whaling should be stopped. The population of this village declined from 13,000 to only 1,200. Only about 1,000 people were left there in Changsaengpo, and they maintained the industry there. And they thought about how to revive their ports. In 1995, they started this festival, a very small village festival where village people came together for a singing and sharing some good food. But this became more popular and bigger. The festival became bigger and bigger year by year. And in 2005, Ulsan hosted the general meeting of International Whaling Commission, which increased the awareness about whaling itself. So the Ministry of Knowledge and Economy designated Changsaengpo as a whaling cultural special zone. And that came to be the Ulsan Whale Festival. Ulsan Whale Festival is the most popular and prominent festivals in Ulsan that spends the biggest budget. But on the other side, you have to think about the people who were drawn out of their hometown and the kind of fishing grounds that were lost as Changsaengpo was transformed from a fishing village to an industrial complex. 2 years ago, there was a problem because they were no longer engaged in fishing, and it is difficult to know how much catch they have. So the fishing community fraternities were all disbanded. The problem with that is not only in Changsaengpo port, but there are other villages that are losing fishing community fraternities. In Busan and Ulsan, there are people who still live there but do not engage in any fishing and do not catch any fish. There are 40 such fraternities where the members do not do any fish. So we have to think about whether to really disband all these community fraternities when the people are still living there, although they're not fishing. And then to give you another example, there is Onsan Industrial Complex, which is next to Changsaengpo Port. There you have the cultural heritage called Cheongmu or Cheongmu dance. This shows the role of this place as a port, and it is designated as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. So the government hosts the cultural festival, and Ulsan City hosts the cultural festival as well. So these two ports have discovered their resources for the future, building on their past fishing village or the village that was known for dancing, traditional dancing. So you see that they don't catch fish anymore, but still have the culture of whale catching. So in this age of culture and ecology and environment, what should we do about this with this heritage? Whaling is no longer an industry and it has become legend. Can they resume whaling? Realistically, they cannot. Same for these people in Changsaengpo, and maybe what we can learn from this example is the fishing heritage and the cultural assets of marine fishing. We should be able to create some added value that are sustainable and future-oriented. People of Changsaengpo was self-sufficient with fishing from 7,000 years ago, and then they transformed this fishing into a fisheries industry. It declined at the point, however, it became a history and they utilized this history.
And this village has been fishing for the past 8,000 years. We call this the Shell Mound or Midden Village. It's located in Yeongdo Island, or if you go to Daejeong Korea National Maritime Museum, Shell Midden Museum, or maritime clusters, they're all located in this area. In 1969, they excavated this village and they found out that this village was filled with fisheries, and the fishing industry was really vibrant in the past. They could find this out through archaeological excavation, and we found out that they are trying to, in this village, continue on with their traditional fishing industry. So let me explain this further. Here you see the Haryang port. The picture here that you see are some samples of the Haryang port. So the vessels go here, and they also sell the fisheries they catch. And the village people gather around to engage in their daily activities in this port. So we wondered how you could use this port to promote these community activities. And fishermen, fishers, they create their own community, which is the fishing village fraternity. So in Dongsan region, they also have something called Dongsan Fishing Village Fraternity. They don't have a specialty seafood or shellfish products, but this fraternity is very active, so all of the members make big decisions about the village, and they run and operate the village. So this village is also part of the New Deal project. And one of the important things of a fishing village is the fishing ground and fishing port. So the people who live here try to make use of their fishing grounds and fishing ports, look after them. And unlike the past, you can't just catch fish without any effort. So you need to make sure that the ecosystem are looked after. They build artificial fishing reefs, they release juvenile young fish and young shellfishes. So looking after these fishing grounds and fishing ports is what these people do in this town, and this is all for the future generation. And from each fishing village, for instance, the Dongsang fishing village, fishing is quite popular. So this has become sort of a product for the village. And people can actually go and experience those fishing to learn about those villages and how people live in this area. But no longer do the people in the fishing villages only engage in fishing. They can rent out their fishing boats, but for Dongsan Fishing Village Fraternity, they also rent out yachts and they also run cruise ships. So in fishing villages, you have fishers, but you also have haenyos, the female divers. So you can see these haenyos diving into the seas. And this has become a UNESCO heritage. A lot of people are interested in this haenyo culture. And here in the Dongsan village, you can go and actually see the haenyo museum, and you can actually see the haenyos dive. The seafood that they catch are sold. If you go to Daejeongdae, which is a tourist attraction, they have a pebble beach. So these haenyos, the female divers, catch their seafood and sell it in the pebble beach within the Daejeongdae tourist attraction. And one of the important community activities is the big catch ritual. It's to pray that the fishers come back home safely and they come back home with a big haul. This used to be a local festival in the past, but now many people from different regions come to the festival. It's a very open festival to promote the village and to share what kind of specialties they have. So when we talk about fishing village, we have areas like Hari Port, which has 7,000, 8,000 years of history, but there are other regions called Yeongdo, which has the District Southport Fishing Village fraternity. But most of this has been reclaimed through the seashore reclamation. And they built ship repair industries and shipbuilding industries. So you have something called this 깡깡이 town, which is the sound of repairing the ships. And all of these assets are coupled with their traditional fishing. So you can see that these fishing villages are changing to other industries. So how do we maintain these traditional fishery? They maintain smaller fishing industries, but these villages also have other industries such as culture activities and others. So the fishing villages are changing. They're changing drastically, which is creating new fishing communities. In the past, only the villagers used to be the fishing village. They used to be the member of the community, but now we have more people coming in from the outside. And the name of the villages should be used as a brand. So let's say we take a unique specialty product from a specific village. It should be named according to the village's name. Or the scenery with local characteristics should be promoted. And we should have festivals which portray the unique identity of that fishing village. So, how can we make use of fishing and non-fishing industries? And it's really meaningful that we maintain this fishing village likeness. So how do we maintain the essence of the fishing village identity and yet create a village that the modern people want? And I think the term that represents this is fishing village likeness. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs used the term called rural likeness, farm town-like, rural characteristics, farm town amenity resources, farm village sceneries, were some of the things that they used to restore this farm town likeness, and we're trying to do this in the fishing scene as well. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries are trying to restore the fishing village likeness. So fishing village is the space for the fishermen, but it's also the space for the public. So the ordinary people should be interested in the fishing village, and they should be responsible when it comes to the different changes and transformations of the fishing villages. We need to raise awareness to that end. So we need to do two things. We need to maintain the tradition, continue on the tradition, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the fishing villages are recreated based on what the general public wants. So first, we need the fishing village likeness. That will lead to that specific fishing village vibe. But the very foundation of the fishing village identity is the essence, which is the fisheries, which requires the ocean. You need to have the ocean to catch the fish. And there is the fishing industry, which is engaged by the fishermen. That's what the essence of a fishing village is about. And on top of that, we need to add the modern role of the fishing village. That's what the fishermen wants, and that's what the general public wants. So we can converge these two to create this fishing village identity and then draw that vibe of the fishing village, which will help people relax and enjoy comfort. And I would like to say many different projects and businesses are evolving from these concepts. So how will the fishing village change going forward? There will be many changes, but I'll take some examples. So beaches used to be fishing villages, but fishing villages evolved, and that's what led to the creation of beaches such as 광안리, 해운대, and 송도 Beach. So if you go to the beach, you will almost all the time find a fishing village next to the beach. But due to the urbanization and industrialization, the fishing villages are changing. In Busan, the second new port construction is planned, and a new airport construction is in discussion for Gadok Island, which means that many of these areas will be reclaimed, and that will lead to the loss of fishing grounds, making the fishermen move to a different area. So all of this needs to be considered when we talk about the change of the fishing village. Aging society is also a big problem. For instance, the Gyeongnam region's fishing villages for experience and recreation plan was abandoned due to aging population. So how do we define the fishing village? First, we need to define the space, and I think we need a bigger definition of the space. Traditionally, the unit used to be one town, but now we need to connect these towns and connect the town and other urban areas. And the composition of the villages should change. No longer are the fishing villages comprised by traditional fishermen, but other people engaging in different industries. So the composition of who are part of the fishing villages should also change. And the economy of the fishing village is no longer just about fishing. So fishing villages are changing greatly. It's undergoing a big transformation, but we need to maintain its essence, and many projects are trying to pursue this. So if we reinterpret the value of fishing village, we would have to tackle these two things that I just mentioned to continue on the tradition of the fishing villages in the future.
Thank you, Professor Kim Yoon-mi, for your insights. It was the first presentation that accords well with the theme, Fish Village vibe, coming from Fish Village identity. The second presentation is Fishing Community Development through Fishing Community New Deal by Park Sang-woo, Director General from Korea Maritime Institute. Very nice to meet you. I research government policies, so I don't know if I'm very good, if I'm suitable for a marine humanities session as a government policy researcher. But among the theme is how to innovate the fishing villages, and the government is trying to do so through a new deal. So I'm going to talk about the new deal and examples on the field on how to develop the fishing villages, fishing communities with the new deal. Since we are a little bit behind time, I'm going to be very compact with this. Fishing villages come to being naturally, mostly for industrial purposes. So the kind of location for fishing villages is sometimes very challenging. Since the 1970s, civil engineering develops, and there was an environment where people can actually make fishing villages instead of natural becoming of fishing villages of the past. And these fishing villages development are closely related to the development of the industry as well. So if the industry goes well, then the fishing villages become bigger. And these days, due to the changes to the environment and the climate and the industry, and this industry slowly becomes a red ocean and goes down a decline, and along with the fishing villages as well. The places that I'm going to take as examples are the fishing villages that become bigger. However, they face challenges such as aging population and aging of facilities. As Professor Kim Yoon-mi mentioned during her presentation, fishing villages is a place to live in, and at the same time it is a place to make money for fishermen. It is a place of work, it is a place for living. This place for living and place for place for work is composed of the fishing ground where they make money and they catch fish, and the fish port where they actually draw their catch to the land, and the hinterland, the villages that are behind the ocean. As you can see, that the houses are gathered in the hinterland. That is only natural because the biggest asset for the fishermen are the fish boats, and in order to keep the fish boats safely, they need a port, a fish port. And it is only natural for their houses to be located closer and closer together to the port where their biggest asset for making money are, which are the fish boats. So fish villages are a place to live and place for work for fishermen, but it is also a fish for recreation for the general public. The general public will come visit for their comfort and relaxation. And as the people's style of relaxation changes, many families will come to the beaches for relaxation. And recently, there are other experiences that people can enjoy in the waters. And their place of recreation sometimes conflicts with the places of the fishermen. Sometimes the divers and the tourists illegally go into the waters, or they infringe on the spaces of the fishermen. Fish village have the public value which cannot be replaced by anything else. The biggest public value and the role is that the fish villages defend our maritime territory. And in Sinan of Jeollanam-do, there was a talk show on the fishing village development. So I visited there, attended the talk show, and many people ask why should we give more consideration or more support to the fishing village when there are a lot of other rural villages such as agricultural villages. I say that is because fishing villages have a very unique role and public good, and that is why we need to make sure that they don't go into extinction. When you come into a fishing village and look at the pattern of the economic activity over one day and over a year, you see that their lifestyle is completely different from a farmer, for instance. The fishermen do their job in the early in the morning or very late at night, and they have to sell their catch or give their catch for sale very early in the morning, which is very different from the hours of the day of a regular farmer. So if you look at the facilities and the roles of these facilities in and around the fishing village, you will see that they're very unique. The problem is that these fishing villages, which are so important and play important roles, are at the risk of extinction. Every year, 6,300 fishing families disappear, and about 1,000, only 1,000 families are added to this family community. You can see that 6,300 disappear and 1,000 are added every year, which means that the fishing villages are on the road to extinction. You look at the islands, which are at the outskirts of the territory, and the fishing villages are disappearing slowly. So the satisfaction with the quality of life in islands and fishing villages are much lower than other types of places to live. The place of people at the fishing village, which is as a place to live and place to work in, and as a place for relaxation for other people, it is hard for fishing villages to maintain all these roles because they are disappearing. we are looking at the democratic statistics, and every time we do the survey, the speed of extinction is getting faster and faster every time we check, which is a very serious problem. As Professor Kim Yoo-mi mentioned, so in the past, fishing villages' main role was to make money by catching the fish or catching other fishery resources, but now the main economic activities are evolving, are changing to recreation. In a positive note, it means that their industry is revolving, but on a negative note, it means that fishing alone is not enough to sustain their living. Another one other thing that we need to remember is that the fish villages are the places that many Korean people flock to for relaxation. And we took a look at how many people actually visit villages and the ports. Several tens of thousands people to up to 4 million people, and on average more than 600,000 tourists visit fishing villages to buy fisheries and sample those fisheries or enjoy the recreational activities. So the villages that used to make money out of catching fisheries are evolving into a place of relaxation for visitors, which shows a potential to create new kind of jobs and new kind of work. This should be something that we need to pay attention to. Now coming back to this fishing village New Deal, why did the government come up with this idea of the New Deal? You see that the fishing villages, there are many fishing villages that are quite big, but most of the fishing villages are very small. These small villages are have been often isolated or excluded from government policies because as a result they lacked necessary facilities and lacked the efforts to create more jobs and values. Therefore, the government decided to generate some changes to these small and outdated fishing villages by putting some investment into it. And actually, they are seeing some results out of these efforts. Since this is an SOC project, the most prominent result would be providing the better access to islands and islanders. And thanks to the improvement of these facilities, they were able to reinforce the safety of the facilities and convenience as well. And they are creating more facilities for recreation. Let's look at these facilities in more detail. This is an SOC project, but rather a small SOC project. The government is spending 3 trillion won into this project, and from next year they're going to evolve this from an SOC to a more sophisticated project aimed at improving the quality of life. The essence is that this is a regional community, such as the fishing community fraternity and the administrative officers. They will discuss what they need to improve and make the decisions and implement the plans. Does it sound very difficult? So far, the fishing communities would only follow whatever the government tells them to do, and they did not have any process of discussion among the people in the village. There are some villages that are actually showing some results, very good results out of this new approach. You can see what is actually happening in these villages. Many residents are taking part into this process. I will introduce 3 cases. And the title of my story is Islanders Are People of Republic of Korea as well. It is Banje village. This is where 3 meals a day were shot, they had only one dream, they had only one wish, is for the ferry to berth directly onto our island so that we can board the ferry more safely. So they thought about how to make it happen, how to allow the ferry to berth directly on the island. So they put most of the budget they were given into this project. And by building the facility, they were able to save time and cost. It was a big improvement in the access to the island for islanders and visitors. And the second is one community which realize a self-reliant livelihood and economic welfare. This is called Chungwang village. And this is a tide land that is half Seosan and half a different village. This is where kamte or sweet labor is produced. And in this fish village, they build a plant for processing sweet labor and they sell it to supermarkets. So far, the communities was an economic communities, and now they are evolving into a more inclusive community. The community fraternity is providing pension to the village people who are older than 75 years so that they can stay self-reliant. So actually our researchers went there and took a film. I'll show you the film that is 30 seconds long. This is what the village looks like. It's a village that's known for sweet labor. The villagers there catch the sweet labor, and they actually, some of them actually work for the factories of processing the labor, and they invest into the cooperative funds, and they make some dividends out of the investment. As I mentioned, the kind of economic benefits they obtain out of it are circulated back to the community. As I said, the elderly villagers who are older than 75 years are not allowed to actually do the fishing anymore, and they're given the pension. And the last example, as Professor Kim Yun-mi mentioned, it is a fishing village, but this fishing village also sells coffee. This is Odal village in Donghae City in Gangwon-do. It is a place where people come to consume fishery catches. In the past, they benefited from another government project. It was but this was not being utilized, so they retrofitted into a cafe, and the members invest about 100,000 won each person, and the revenue out of this cafe is 15 million won every month. So let me give you my conclusion. As I said, the fishing communities are quickly transitioning from a production center to a tourism service center. The fishing villages that were accustomed to producing fisheries should be able to respond to this fast changes in order to be sustainable. Still, there are so many communities that are left at the brink of extinction, which means that the government should make more investment into these villages, and they should not give up on these villages. In this process, we are seeing a lot of benefits out of this investment, and building on these benefits, we should continue to pay attention to these villages. Thanks for listening.
박성우 부장님 귀한 발표 감.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Park Sang-woo. We were able to see the strategy of development of fishing village through the New Deal project. And he gave us many different examples to talk about the topic of his presentation. For our third presentation, we will invite reporter Choi Jin-seok of KBS to talk about how fishing villages are consumed. The floor is yours. Please welcome him with a big hand. Good afternoon, everyone. I work in KBS Changwon. My name is Choi Jin-seok. So the title of my presentation is How Are Fishing Villages Consumed? And to elaborate on my title, I want to talk about how the fishing villages are covered by the media. The reason why I am here is early this year, I started to be covering the maritime economy, and I found out that in the island called Chudo, they are famous for the cube snailfish, but the cube snailfish are no longer caught in this island called Chudo. So I was writing articles about this, and when I went to Chudo and interviewed people there said, why are you just talking about cube snailfish? The sea is empty. We can't catch anything. So that's the moment when I thought I should try to cover the fishing village from a different perspective. That's why I wrote these featured articles. And the title of my article was the fishing villages that are forefront of extinction. You can see here that the fishes are no longer caught at big amounts in this area. And I learned that my approach of covering the story was different. So I shifted my focus and wrote 5 different articles on this fishing villages that were going extinct. And I wrote articles on how these experience and recreation fishing villages were going out of plan. And then I realized I should have actually covered the statistics on how these fishing villages were going away. So I decided to create a documentary that finds out the cause and the current state of the fishing villages. So I'm in the process of making this documentary, and the title of my documentary is At the Forefront of Extinction, Fishing Villages Are Vanishing, and I'm still in the process of editing my documentary. So before I go into my presentation, I want to first talk about how the fishing villages are covered by the media. So let's see a short clip of how they are reported.
마치고 일제히 조업에 나섰습니다. 은빛 만선을 꿈꾸며 출어한 배에 최진석 기자가 함께 탔습니다.
청정해역을 자랑하는 남해의 사량도 앞바다. 멸치잡이 배들이 물이 지어 바다 곳곳을 돌아다닙니다. 멸치 탐색이 끝나자 어선 2척이 길이 700m의 그물을 양쪽으로 펼쳐 멸치떼를 몰아넣습니다. 30분 뒤 끌어올린 그물 안은 은빛 멸치떼들로 가득합니다. 무게가 700kg이 넘습니다. 이렇게 잡힌 그물 속 멸치들은 곧바로 진공 펌프를 통해 바로 옆 가공선으로 옮겨집니다. 멸치는 물 밖으로 나오면 바로 죽기 때문에 이렇게 건져 올리자마자 펄펄 끓는 소금물에 삶습니다.
So as you saw from the short clip, this is nothing new to the fishermen. They go to catch anchovies and they talk about how these anchovies are caught and how much anchovies are caught, whether the catch was big or small. So from the perspective of fishermen, this is nothing new. This is not even news. But every year the news covers the story on how the fishes are caught. So every year the story is the same. And that was my first report on catching anchovies, so I did not see that there was any problem on how I was covering the story. And all of my senior reporters said, go to the seaside, do some report, and enjoy the great seafood on the local area. So I thought everything was great in the fishing villages. But now I wanted to find out when the problem started. So let's see another video clip.
울릉도가 활기를 되찾고 있습니다. 어민들의 주 수입원인 오징어잡이가 한창입니다. 복창현 기자가 다녀왔습니다.
해가 진 뒤 울릉도 앞바다는 불야성입니다. 오징어잡이 어선들이 밝힌 불빛, 이른바 어화입니다. 미끼를 문 오징어들이 물을 뿜으며 올라옵니다. 모처럼의 만선으로 태풍 피해로 멍들었던 어민들의 마음도 한결 가볍습니다.
많이 잡히면 좋지요. 가격이 조금 다운되더라도.
지난 태풍의 영향으로 울릉도에선 오징어 잡이가 예년보다 20일가량 늦어졌습니다.
쉴 새 없이 돌아가는 요란한 기계음 속에 오징어 잡이 작업은 밤새 계속되고 있습니다.
So as you can see from this clip, it's the same exact news, but a different type of fish. So it's the same format, same coverage. But as I became a reporter in charge of maritime economy, I tried to approach this topic from a different perspective. So I studied a lot about fishing villages, wrote articles, and now I'm creating a documentary. And in the process of making this documentary, I traveled nationwide, and I found one unique common thing. I talked to about 20 fishermen, and about 70% of them said they've already had exposure to media. They were interviewed in the past. So this is a show that was released, I think, less than 30 days ago. It's about Churo, which is a best reaching ground. So it's a show that covered how this beautiful island Churo with the best fishing ground was very satisfactory to the local citizens. So it's a very short clip. You can see the subtitles that the person who's being interviewed is so happy. He says, you know, I'm catching a lot of fish, I'm very satisfied. And I went there not on the same day, but on different day. I've been to Churo for 4 times, and every time the news that I covered was on water scarcity. But at the same time, when I was covering about the water scarcity, he was saying that he was satisfied with his catch. So there was a discrepancy, because to me, he said there's not much water, there's this water scarcity problem, but in another show, he said he was satisfied. So I was really surprised at how the interviews turned out to be different. So let's take a look at how he was interviewed by a different reporter and by me.
물이 기해서 이 통에다가 물로 받아놓고 이래가 지금 쓰고 있어요. 일단 물로 받아놓고 이렇게 끓여가고 있어요.
일일이 다 끓여서 쓰셔야 돼요.
예, 이래야 끓여가 묻고 우리가 또 쓰기도 하고. 물이 지금 오물이 찌꺼리 엄청 많아. 이 어쩔 수가 없어. 이 물이 귀하다 보니까 먼지가 들어가고 이래갖고 지금 쓰고 있어요. 이래 바다 안 쓰면 시내 사람들은 수도래 쓰는데 우리들은 수도를 할 수가 없어.
네, 이렇게 지금 이제
So you can see here that he is trying to clean the fish that he caught on that day, but you might have noticed the clothes that he's wearing is the same as the previous interview. So he's wearing the same shirt because he could not wash it. There was not much water. So he takes water from the water tank, and you see here there is this small mosquito babies, and he had to boil the water to wash the flounder he caught, to treat us with that flounder that he caught. And he's catching the rain to actually use as water due to water scarcity. And I'm pretty sure that the other team saw this current state, but they only covered the beautiful side of the island. So I thought that this was not right. I thought this was really surprising. And that's why I tried to discover these problems of these islands. And if you see the interview of the show called 어영차, Fish Fishing Fisher, it's different.
고향을 찾아왔는데 아름답게 살라고 노년에 65살까지 내가 요들 때 55이라. 그러면 나만키 편하게 아름답게 살라고 왔는데 아름다운 섬이 아니고 말하자면 폐허되는 섬이라고 봐야 돼. 사람이 물이 없으면 아무것도 안 됩니다, 지금. 물이 인생을 좌우하고 모든 사람을 살리고 지우하는 물이 없으면 안 되는데 물 자체가 없다 보니까 여기서 지금 나도 지금 살기가 싫어가지고 나도 지금 밖을 나가려고 하고 있어요. 생각을 이조시로 계속된다면.
So it's a completely different story from the previous interview of another person. So the TV shows used to only show the good side of the oceans and the fishing villages. That's sort of the tradition and the conventional way. And I think this is really shocking because we went to the same island around the same time, but the interviewees respond in a different manner. I don't know how many of you went to a fishing village, but if you talk to those local people, they tell you, oh, I was on that 6 o'clock My Home show. They only talk about the good things of the island. So many of them only talk about the good things about the island that they live in. So I realized media only illustrates the beautiful side, the good sides of the islands and the fishing village. They try to fit these fishing villages to the framework that they want to show. Let's take a look at the example of Jukbangnyeom. These are the couple who live in the Jukbangnyeom area. And they also had an interview, and you can find this clip on YouTube. And the local fishermen say that this is a place where we can catch anchovies all the time. We're always looking forward to the next year because there's so much anchovies. So anchovies are so precious. And the interview is about how they catch the anchovies. It's a very general story. But I think about 1 or 2 months ago, when I visited that same exact place, I found that this interview was quite interesting because they were working with their son, and they said to me that they do not want their son to be working as a fisherman in the future. That's an interview that I made.
안 하고 만약에 죽방염 이것만 하면은 생계 유지가 될까요?
농업 안 하고 농사도 안 짓고 죽방염 한다. 아예 제 죽방염은 내려놓고 제 공사장에 가서 삽질을 나섭니다.
So although that this is a fish tank full of anchovies, when I said, can you speak frankly? And he said, you know what, I can't do this bamboo fishing anymore. Jukbangnyeom, this way of fishing is no longer sustainable. He said it's actually better to work in a factory. That's why he actually does run a farm and fishing at the same time. He can't make the ends meet just by bamboo fishing. When I found out why this was so, it's because of climate change, ocean pollution, and you can no longer catch anchovies in the near seashores. And you see these new types of fish. You can't even know these tropical fish, what they are. So this specific fisherman said that he needs to give up bamboo fishing. The only thing he can do is maybe make this a tourist attraction because now you cannot make your ends meet just by catching anchovies. So all of this positive, good news about fishing villages are covered a lot by the media. And maybe it might be helpful to these fishermen, but if you look at the other side, the flip side of the story, there are problems that needs to be reported as well. That's why I'm making the documentary on the problems of the fishing villages. The fishing village that you see on media are these beautiful sceneries, these relaxing towns. So we consume it in a positive note, per se. So we always talked about these good stories, these nice to hear stories about the fishing villages. But if you look at their life satisfaction, it's really low compared to other rural areas, and their population extinction index is the highest. The island fishing villages will go extinct fastest out of all these rural areas. So if we want to maintain this fishing village identity or likeness, we need to make sure that these local people can live there and make their ends meet. Of course, we go there for travel and for tourist attractions, but at the same time, when we travel there, we need to help these local fishing villages so that they can keep on living in those fishing villages. We can't just keep promoting and advertising all this big catch, good haul, because in 20 years, the fishing villages that we see today may not be there anymore. I'm really concerned about this. So what I am doing is to create a documentary that doesn't really focus on the traditional concept of fishing villages, but rather their difficulty, their issues, and what they want to see improve. So I went on an interviews for the past 3 months, and we're on the final editing stage, and it will be broadcasted on the Gyeongnam KBS soon. I wanted to come with a preview clip for today's forum, and I wanted to show you what KBS was doing to that extent, but we could not finish the editing, so I cannot show you a preview today, unfortunately. But when I accepted the offer to participate in this forum, I wanted to show all of the people that I was trying to expose the downsides of these fishing villages. But after a long time of thinking, it's really important for us to not ignore these downsides. So thank you for your attention to my presentation. Thank you.
발표 감사합니다.
Mr. Choi Jin-seok, journalist Choi Jin-seok, thank you very much for sharing not only the rosy pictures of the fishing village, but also the negative face of the villages. Now this brings to the close the Marine Humanities session, Fishing Village Adding Ocean to the Humanities.
잠시 후 2시
From 2:50, we are going to have the panel discussion. We would like to ask the participants to stay seated and participate in the panel discussion. And for those of you coming online, please wait a little bit.
체크하겠습니다. 토론에 앞서 마이크 체크하도록 하겠습니다.
역할을 하라고 해야 하는 거니까. 그냥 바로 시작하면 되죠.
Can we start right away? I will start right away. I am Ryu Chong-ro, Chairman of Busan Fisheries Policy Forum. I'm going to be moderating the panel discussion. I'm not going to talk too much because we are behind time. But I will plan to be about 5 minutes later than the planned finishing time because we are behind time. So I'm going to ask the three presenters to wait a little bit, and I'm going to invite the 4 panel discussants to discuss their opinion. I'll give 5 minutes to each one of you. And then after that we will take the examples from the floor. Maybe we will invite about 2 or 3 people to express their opinions, and then we will give a little bit of time to the presenters, followed by follow-up message to the panel discussants. So I will skip introducing the presenters, but I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have Nam Soo-min, Director of Busan Fishing Village Specialized Support Center. We have Oh Mi-young, Manager of Suyong Cultural Center, who are working on the front directly with the residents of Suyong. We have Moon Hae-jin, Research Professor at Pugyong National University. And we have Peggy Bum, Head Office of Promotion and Design Council of Busan. So for convenience, I'm going to give 5 minutes from the panel discussants who is sitting the closest to me. Thank you. Starting from Ms. Nam Soo-min.
Hello everyone. As introduced, I am Nam Soo-min, the Director of Busan Fishing Village Specialized Support Center. Nice to meet every one of you. We just heard 3 presentations today. They were very insightful and they covered a lot of topics that we had interest. You can take off your mask. So the 3 presentations covered the topics that I usually had interested in, and we at the center have 50 projects to support the fishing villages, and I was really excited to see those stories presented by our speakers today. So the topic of today is fishing village identity, fishing village likeness, and I thought, what really is this fishing village likeness? And my conclusion was this. I'll keep it short. I would say that it used to be A in the past, but now it is B. So it's different from the past. So our 3 speakers today said that the fishing villages are changing. And the main cause is that there's lack of resources. The resource depletion is forcing the fishing villages are changing. And our fishing villages know this. And our center and the Minister of Fisheries know this really quite well. They feel it firsthand, and we try to tackle this problem. So what our center does is the following. We were established to address this problem. In the past, we had rich amount of fishery, maritime resources, so the fishing villages could just catch abundant amount of fishes and sell them. So they put a lot of effort into catching a lot of fish, but now they can't catch a lot of fish. So we need to change. We need to approach this problem from a different perspective. So the government said, then let's shift from catching a lot of fish to selling this fish at a higher price. Let's find a way to do so. That's how we're trying to support this approach. How can we sell this limited resources at a higher price? The way we approach this is by directly processing the resources and also attract tourists to the villages. But this is not easy because when we talk about fishing villages, the local people say that people living in those villages are becoming older. You can see from a lot of stats, compared to other agricultural villages, fishing villages are aging faster. When you meet these fishermen, you can hardly find people in their 60s. Most of them are in their 70s. We say 40s an age where you move over to become a senior. But in these villages, 70 is actually the biggest population, which means they can do whatever they want. It's an age where they can do whatever they want in those fishing villages. And yet we try to change these people. It's a very daring attempt. We can't change these people because they've lived for a certain lifestyle for a very long time, but the environment's changing, the policy is changing, and the government expects these local people to heed to the changing policies. And we make a lot of requests and demands to this local population. Let's say, keep the public sea tanks clean, don't catch too much turtles, and we have all of these requirement items, and it's many of the times the fishermen cannot keep all of these rules and policies. It's because things are changing too fast. I mean, sometimes all these changes that we face today are too fast for us, and we expect these aging population to follow these changes. And in the process of inputting a lot of these financial resources to support these fishing villages, the results are not that visible. We can't really find those short-term results. So how can we maintain this fishing village likeness? The first is we need people. We need to maintain the local population. That's the first issue that we need to address. And in that sense, this session, the Maritime Humanities session, is meaningful. It's going to lay the groundwork for what we do at the moment. In our center, we try to run projects for the fishing villages, but moving forward, we're going to approach the individuals living in those communities so that we can come up with projects that the individuals can tolerate and accept. We need to make sure that local people can coexist, and we try to attract businesses in those local areas. But if those local businesses go away, that's not just -1 point, that's a huge amount of loss. So we need to maintain those businesses that we attracted to stay there so that they can further push forward with not just 4th industrialization, but 5th, 6th industrialization. And we also need to meet the demands of the general public to create the fishing village where everyone is satisfied. So we need to take an individual approach when we say we need to maintain the fishing village likeness. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you. The expertise of each of the panel discussions are very diverse, and their jobs are diverse. So the panel discussion is open to any of your idea. And Ms. Omi Young, manager from Culture Center. Very nice to meet you. I am Omi Young, the manager of Suyong Culture Center. Thank you for your invitation, and I am taking a lot away from today's discussion. In Suyong districts, there are 2 fishing villages and 2 fishing fraternities. While working for the cultural center, I wasn't really paying too much attention to the fishing villages and the fraternities. And about 2016 and 2017, we had a project about discovering the contents from the fishing village. By engaging in this project, I had an opportunity to learn more about the history of Suyong district. And I was very surprised to learn these new things. At first, the approach was very simple. Many scholars have told us that not only agricultural villages, fishing villages are also on the road of extinction. And my expectation at the time was, because I'm not capable of stopping such decline of population, so what I could do is to collect the data on the history and culture of our hometown. That was the role of a culture center. But I came to reflect upon what we've been doing so far during this time of project. We have the fishermen and the henya, the female divers in our community, and I wasn't very knowledgeable about them. I was indifferent to them. While pursuing these projects, we got the assistance from the fraternities and the residents to complete, and that was left as a result of our cultural center. But I was feeling very heavy-hearted even after that, because we've always thought whether the cultural center can somehow contribute to addressing the issues of our community. However, we were not able to really pursue anything substantial, partly because of COVID. And this year we thought that we should no longer procrastinate on this. We thought about what approaches the culture center take, what can we do to help our community villages. And we thought that we should meet with the residents of our community as a starting point. So our cultural center, of course, we host the festivals and the events on Culture Day every month with the members of the cultural classes, and we visited the Minlak fraternity and to learn about the current situation of the village of Minlak, and we went to see the fish boats coming back to the dock and the catch they caught on that day, and how the fishermen come back from the fishing operation and repair their nets and so on. By engaging with them and having interactions with them, and we talked about what they thought and how their life is. There are actually many people in Suyong district who do not even know that there are 2 fish village fraternities in Suyong. By learning good examples and the good insights from today's discussion, researcher Mr. Park Sang-woo introduced the government New Deal, and I agree with the ideas of the New Deal. Actually, yesterday, the head of one of the fraternities and the cultural center came together to talk about what we could do to improve our communities, fishing villages and fishing communities' livelihood. At the moment, it is very hard to address these issues, but by getting the good advice and the help from the experts here, we will be able to use your expertise. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you. Next, we will continue with Professor Moon Hae-jin. I would like to first thank our three presenters. They shared very insightful presentations. I could relate to the story. Some of them were heartbreaking, especially the presentation made by reporter Choi Jin-seok made us see how it is difficult for the fishermen to actually speak up their current state. All of the media coverage and broadcasting is about the beautiful lifestyle of the fishing villages. That's how they're illustrated and portrayed. But the extension of fishing village, which was presented by all of the three speakers, allowed us to think again about the dangers that we face today. First, Professor Kim Yoon-mi talked about the whaling village's history, and she told us how the introduction of industrial complex forced these fishermen to move, and only the culture of whaling remains in those towns. So how could we address this extinction of fishing villages and their culture? And as for Director General Park Sang-woo, he told us why it was inevitable for the government to pursue with the New Deal project. The population is aging and the infrastructure is outdated in these fishing villages. To add vigor to these villages, the project was inevitable. And the population is still declining rapidly in those fishing villages. So this extinction rate is quite fast. And reporter Choi Jin-seok talked about Chudo and the issue of water scarcity. Obviously, we cannot survive without water. And we can see from his presentation that there's not much infrastructure in those fishing villages, and for bamboo fishing, their catch is declining every year. So this fish catching is no longer helpful in terms of making money and sustaining their livelihoods. So how can we support these fishing villages? How should we view the development of fishing villages? And all of these presenters talked about this topic. And what we're trying to do is to increase the accessibility of these fishing villages, increase the SOC projects for the improvement of infrastructure, and then shift the major industry from fishing to tourism. And I agree to his comment, Mr. Park Sang-woo's comments, that this can actually help the economy of these fishing villages. This could actually draw in more population to those local areas. But then, if we do so, how can we maintain this fishing village likeness? As Professor Kim Yoon-mi talked about this farm town amenity, this is about the sceneries, farm town that is livable. So it needs to be an agricultural town that is a place where people want to live. It should be filled with these amenities, and at the same time, there should be this rural vibe. So the same goes for fishing villages. How can we create a fishing village filled with infrastructure and make it livable? But when it comes to whaling villages like Changsengpo, how can we keep their identity and their culture and their community culture? These are some things that we should address going forward. And Director General Park Sang-woo talked about the New Deal project. It comes to an end this year. So what do we do starting next year? The new project is about increasing the livelihood of fishing villages and creating more jobs. So that's the new project that the government is going to pursue. It's going to make these fishing villages more livable. However, what kind of policies do you have to keep this fishing village identity? How can you keep the fishing grounds, the traditions of fishermen, and how can you maintain the fishing village likeness of those fishing communities? I think these ideas should be considered when you create a policy. Thank you for that opportunity to present.
Very nice to meet you. I am Peggy Bum, the head of promotion, Design Council, Busan. I'm a little nervous because I have to go as the last person in the discussion. I work as an advisor for landscape and the public design as someone working in the design council. And some people will come to me and show the street lamps, several street lamps, and ask me to pick which one is the best. And I ask them, where do you put this lamp, and what do the other street lamps look like that will be next to them, and how big is the walk path, and where, in which angle does the shadow is the shadow created? And they will say, well, just pick the nice one. I start my discussion with this story because I want to say that we first need to have a accurate understanding of the problem with the location, any particular location, to be able to have the good solution to whatever problem we have. I was also the evaluator and the consultant to the Fish Village New Deal 300 project. What I felt by working, actually being confined in the building of the Ministry of Fisheries for 3 days as an evaluation, and I look at their focus, I look at their contents such as the seawalls, the marine sport recreation, the walk path, and the parking lots. And I asked myself, well, how come there's nothing new? Do all the fish villages have the same problem? How come the solution to all the fish villages are exactly the same? What I'm trying to say is that we have to understand the problem exactly and accurately to be able to propose a solution to the problem. The start of a design is to understand the problem, and the problem can be categorized into 3. The first is the problem that anybody can express and anybody can notice. Let's say there's no water. It's so straightforward. I thought Trudeau was Africa by watching your film. It was so obvious what the problem is. Let's say we do not like the current situation because there's no waste bin, because the streets are too dirty. Those are the expressions of problems. And another problem is that the habits, they don't even know whether they have inconvenience because they've been living like this for several decades. They just believe that that's the way life is and that's what it's supposed to be. And number 3 problem is just living your life not knowing that something is a problem. Not knowing the problem itself could be a problem. So we have to look into these problems, and the first thing to do is that unless you really fix the problem, then you are never appreciated for whatever you do. But once you fix the problem, then the people you serve are so moved and so impressed, and they are happy, and they are so happy because you fix the problem. Then how do you discover the problem? The residents should come together. They should be engaged to find the problems. How come the ministry just proposed the same set of solutions to all the fishing problems? Because maybe a handful of proposers, the planners will just bring about the solutions that they thought about and try to apply them to all fish villages. Have they really visited and discovered the problems of the fish villages? Maybe not. Reporter Mr. Choi Jin-seok today showed us he had enlightenment by the fishermen who got actually angry at us asking why the catch of the fish was not good enough as before, and I get the same enlightenment. Let's say you go to see a doctor and say I feel uncomfortable in my tummy, and he gives me just one pill, and does the pill just help? If the pill just helped me, does it mean that I am healed? As Mr. Choi Jin-seok said, that we always see the beautiful side of the fish villages, and the Ministry of Fisheries will also come up with the good examples of showing how livable the fish villages are. So we will just see them and think that, oh, the fish villages are so beautiful. I want to live in one of them. So the question is, are those solutions good for any fish villages? They're not going to be the same, because if you generalize this solution, we may actually end up with bigger solutions, bigger problems. So if you want to really fix the problems, you have to precisely understand what you want to fix. Only then will you have effective solutions to problems, and only then will you have the fish villages that really have the identity as fish villages. Thank you very much for the insights. So today, we are talking about the fish villages, and we will have the freedom to propose the ideas about whatever the fish village identities. So anyone who would like to add from the floor, please raise your hands. I will invite about 2 to 3 people and give each one about 3 minutes. Yes, please.
안녕하십니까 부경대 양.
Hello everyone, I am Yang Minho from Pugyong National University. So this fishing village identity or fishing village likeness is a key word that I'm interested in as well. And I think this will be different depending on how you view it. People who actually live in the fishing villages and people who are outside of the villages would view this word from a different way. So what is it from an outsider's perspective, and what is it from somebody who actually makes living out of fishing? So I do think we would have to take a two-tracked approach when we try to define this concept. And the extinction of fishing villages is in line with the extinction of rural, regional towns. So population, when we see it from economic terms, is actually money. And reporter Che said that the bamboo fishing is something that the fishermen do not want to pass on to their children. So how can we incentivize these people to pass down their traditions and their way of working? We would have to think about that. And in that sense, the perception of fishing village identity should be looked into, because it's different for local people and outsiders. Thank you.
네, 좋은 의견이십니다.
Thank you for the good opinion.
반갑습니다.
Nice to meet you. I am Gong Mira from Pugyong National University. I would like to thank the presenters and the panelists for the good ideas. I am not an expert on this issue, but I wanted to share my simple ideas and suggestions. So Fish Village is the main theme of today, and our idea, the idea that we're trying to pull is how to improve the fish villages and stop them from going extinct. Then we need to think about how to maintain the fish villages and help them survive. First of all, the fishermen, the people of the fish village should love their job of fishing. That should be the first point, first step, for them to enjoy and love what they do. What policies should we implement, and what benefits should fishing job give them? How can we help generate those benefits? Many presenters and panelists have already mentioned that the income is important, of course important. The fishing families should be able to obtain enough income, but at the same time, the kind of the
skills as a master, can we help them maintain the spirit of traditional fishing activity? Mr. Park Sang-woo also mentioned the same idea. He said that starting from next year, well, the current project is not really resulting in good performance. Why is that? Because the government's policies naturally have some limitations. In Japan, they had migrant fish village. There was subsidized fish village and unsubsidized fish villages. In unsubsidized fish villages, they just keep on living there because they enjoy whatever they do. I guess it's the mindset and the joy that they have in the villages that help them to stay there in the villages without the subsidies that the governments give. So I wonder what we can do to help the fishing village families have the positive mindset to enjoy living in the fish villages. First, of course, they need to have sufficient or high income. And for them to want to pass their profession to their next generation, their children. For them to really want to do that, there should be some vibrant culture in the fish village so that the people of the fish villages do not want to leave the village for a better living environment. As I said, the Japanese government policies of subsidized and unsubsidized fish villages, after some time the government policies lose their effects. As Mr. Park Sang-woo suggested, there are some communities where the residents came up with the cooperative council. So instead of the government's policy, they form their own councils, which is more sustainable. The council can bring together the voices of the residents, and for this kind of councils to be sustainable instead of being a one-off event, there should be some fundamental facilities. And the key to that is the policies that make the fishing village residents to love what they do. Thank you. Thank you. I think due to time constraints, I don't think we can take any more comments from the floor. I need to keep the time. Does anyone else from the floor have any additional comments? Maybe some additional comments that they want to make?
말씀 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you for the ideas. The fish village identity that I define is not really expressed in any one idea or any one phrase. Today, in 2022, of course there are fish villages that you can make ends meet with fishing alone, but there are other villages where it is impossible with fishing alone. So it is hard to have just one generalized definition of identity of fish villages. However, having said that, we should not lose the identity of fish villages. If we fail to maintain the fish village identity, we cannot maintain those villages anymore. We keep on saying
the importance of community idea. The kind of problem of extinction is not just simply about there are no more people to live in there. It is bigger than that. It's actually a situation where the local community cannot sustain anymore. So it's not a conclusion that can be rushed to. There are about 2,700 communities, and actually there are more than 4,000 fishing villages in Korea. The kind of government policies vitalizing the fish villages have their limitations at the end. So it is better for the local communities themselves to come together and bring about solutions to their own problems. Thank you. Any other ideas from Mr. Choi?
So when I was preparing for this presentation, I kept thinking over and over what this fishing village identity was. So the scenes that you see on the news coverage is also what fishing village identity is, but I think that if we continue on to only report those positive notes, that's going to make it seem like the fishing villages only have positive sides. That's why I try to warn today to show that there are different sides, that there are negative sides. And in order for us to maintain those positive sides of those fishing villages, to make sure that they survive, we would have to engage in a more in-depth conversation with those local fishermen and local community, because at the moment only few number of people engage in those conversations, so many times their opinions are disregarded. In Gyeongnam KBS we have a show called Playground, and there all the children who play in those playground give their ideas. They say, oh, we don't have a seesaw, we don't have any other things to play with in the playground. If we have a similar setup for the fishing villages where these local people can participate and give their opinions and say this is the way we should pursue to maintain this fishing village identity, would be meaningful.
Anybody else who can speak for 1 minute? About the fish village identity, it should not be just about infrastructure building. It should also be about the community and the traditional identities. Mr. Chen mentioned the bamboo fishing. That is number 3. That is a fishing heritage, nationally important fishing heritage number 3, which is eco-friendly and traditional and sustainable kind of fishing activity. Chukbangnyam or bamboo fishing results in so small of a catch that the fisherman doesn't want to inherit it, doesn't want to pass it on to their children. If it is so unprofitable, then we need to think about not only building the infrastructure or the convenience, but about building the communities to sustain the culture and the tradition of their fishing activity. Because fishing village identity is different in each fishing village. Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Baek Bum has a lot of opinions to share, but I think it is time to wrap it up. Today, we have participants from various expertise and various backgrounds, and thank you for your participation. Also, I'd like to thank the floor for participation. At this global forum, the World Ocean Forum, I think it is the first time for such a global scale forum to focus on the theme of Fish Village. In this small session on Fish Village, are being reproduced in many places in the world. We warn that the fish villages are on the road of extinction, and I believe that it is a paradox expressed by the people who will stop, who want to and who will actually stop the fish villages from going extinct, because they believe that the fish villages will continue as humankind continues to live on. Then we need to think about how we can make the fish villages survive in a sound manner. Although the scale and the numbers of the fish villages may decrease in the future, we will make sure that the fish villages will continue on in a better shape. What I would like to ask all of you is that I'm sorry that I wasn't able to give you enough time to talk about your good ideas, but I hope that every year we will have a forum like this. It doesn't have to be a big global forum, but sometimes we can invite people from other countries to learn more about this better idea. So we can invite the people and the storytellers of fish villages every year so that this forum can evolve into a more useful forum of discussion. So let's just agree that we will do so. We will meet every year and all the participants will participate in this forum every year, right? So thank you. I would like to wrap up here. Thank you, Chairman Yu Chung-woo of Busan Fisheries Policy Forum and the discussants and presenters for taking part in the discussion. This concludes the Marine Humanities session. Thank you very much.